Hi guys. Okay, I want to go ahead and spend some time with the practice midterm, okay, for chapter 14 here, okay, and let's go ahead and start to take a look at a couple of these questions, okay. So most of these questions are going to deal with bonds. I think the note payable stuff, there's analogy with some of the bond stuff that we're looking at. Plus we talked about the short-term notes in chapter 13, tested on midterm 1. And there's not a big difference between the things that we were saying in chapter 14 about notes. So I'm going to focus on, I think it's okay if we focus more on bonds here. Okay. All right, good. So we have this C side issues a bond that has a stated rate. Remember, stated rate, coupon rate, contract rate, all synonymous terms. That's what the bond is issued, and that stated rate doesn't change. Face amount of $50,000 is due in 5 years. Interest payments are made semi-annually. Okay, it's important in these questions to pick up some of the key pieces of information: the stated rate, the face amount of the bond, okay, semi-annual payments. The market rate of interest is 12%, and then the basically what they call the call of the question is what is the price of the bond? What should it issue for? Okay, and so you can see a couple of the key pieces of information down there in the solution, but let's make sure we're clear on where some of those things came from, okay? So remember, as we said in the lecture, regardless of what happens with the market rate, that stated / coupon rate stays the same. So we have to sit there and pick up that 50,000. We pick up the, again, stated rate is 10%, 0.10, but since it's a semi-annual bond, right, then we have to multiply that by 1/2, okay? And the result there is a $2,500 interest payment that will be made every 6 months, okay? Now, to figure out the price of this bond, we have to get present value. And so you can see they list out a couple of factors here. Okay, let's go ahead and maybe it's easier to highlight those factors. Okay, and we need to know how to pick up these factors. I will expect you to be using the table approach on your midterm. So I go ahead and I go to my present value table. Okay, and let's see if we can find that present value factor for the principal first. Okay, for the face amount of the bond first, I should say, is probably a better term. And of course, now I forget what the specifics were in this question. 12%, okay, is the market rate of interest. Now, because it's a semi-annual bond, though, I've got to take the 12%, divide that by 2. So it's actually what? It's 6% every for the semi-annual periods. That's the market rate of interest, and that's what I use to discount. So even though I calculate my cash interest on the face amount to do my present value, to do my discounting to figure out the price of this bond, I use the market rate of interest, okay? And they tell me that it's a 5-year bond, but since it has what? 2 semi-annual periods, I have to take the years, 5 years, times 2 gives me 10 semi-annual periods. Okay, good. So now that I know that, I can go ahead and find these factors. And for the principal, I go to 10 periods, 6%, and of course I'm on the wrong table. That's present value of an annuity. I'm going to do the face amount first. So it's 10 periods, right? And it's what, 6%? That gives me that factor right there, 0.55839. I look back at the problem just to verify what the solution gave me, 0.55839. We're good there. For the interest, it's an annuity. It's a stream of payments. So now I've got to pop over to the present value of the annuity table. Okay. 10 periods, 6%, right? Semi-annual rate, 10 semi-annual periods, 7.36009. Take a look back at the problem, 7.36009. I go ahead and I do the multiplication, add those two amounts together. The price of this bond is $46,340. This $320. This bond sold for what? Less than its face amount, and it should, because the coupon stated yield, market rate, effective rate, they have a lot of different terms for that, was 12%. Well, stop, erase all that, okay, because I think I mixed some terms there. Coupon stated rate are the same. Coupon stated rate, contractual rate, that's the amount that's on the bond. When we talk about the market rate, yield rate, effective rate, that's basically what the market does from period to period, right? And since the market rate was more than the coupon rate, this bond sold at a discount. That's what I wanted to say. Okay. All right, good. So that was very similar to what we saw in the lecture. In fact, I think we had those same rates for the discount bond, 10% and 12%. It's just that the face amount of the bond was a little different there. Okay. All right, good. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at this Hillside Excursion issues bonds due in 10 years with a stated rate of 7%. Okay, well, I know I'm going to probably have to use these things, so I'm just going to pick these up. A face amount of $200,000. Interest is semi-annual. Well, thank you. This gives me all the key information right up here. The market rate for this type of bond is 6%. Now this one says use Excel or a financial calculator, and you could do that. I'm not going to make you do these questions according to the table, but when I like to teach this, I like to use the table approach just so you understand the mechanics of the table. There are obviously more sophisticated ways to do this in the table, but I think we've got some other classes here that are going to teach you that. So I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to use the tables. Okay. So I know that I have to get the present value of the face to figure out the price of this bond. That's $200,000. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know I'm going to multiply that by a factor from the table. That's the present value of the dollar table. It's what? It's 10 years. And it's a 6% bond. It's semi-annual. So we need what? We need interest rate of 3%, 6 divided by 2. And we need 20 periods, right? Which is going to be the 10 years times the 2 semi-annual periods. So let's just go ahead and let's pick up that factor right now. Okay, so I go ahead and it's present value of $1. Make sure you're on the right table. If you ever are questioning, hey, did I get on the right table? When it's a single sum, all the numbers are less than 0. When you're dealing with annuity, all the numbers except the one payment row, which is kind of stupid because if it's one payment, it's not an annuity. But all the other numbers are more than one because there's more than one payment, right? Okay, so again, this time now we're at 3%. And we are sitting here at what? At 20 periods. 3% at 20 periods. I'm seeing 0.55368. Okay, 0.55368. So I take the 200,000 times 0.55368. Okay, and we'll see what that gives me. I'll do that math in a second. But then I also have to figure out, well, what is the semi-annual interest that gets made? And, I don't see any reason to rewrite the calculation. It's right here. It's $7,000 every 6 months because we took the, 7%. Again, we use the stated rate, coupon rate, contract rate, all synonymous terms on this, and then because it's semi-annual, we multiply that by 1/2. That gives me the 7,000. Now I take the 7,000 and I have to find the factor for that. So I go back over to my tables. This time I need to use the annuity table, and again it was 3%, right, for 20 periods. I come down here, 3% for 20 periods gives me this 14.87747. Okay, so I go ahead, 14, right, 0.87747, is that what it was? 14, go back, make sure I got it right, 14.87747. 14.87747. Good. Okay, so now I can go ahead and do the math on that. And when I do, I get what? I get my calculator, 200,000 times 0.55, 368. That gives me 110,000. I'll just write it over here. 110,736. Okay. And then I got to get the present value of the interest payments using the present value of the ordinary annuity factor. 7,000 times 14.87747. That gives me 104,142, that's a comma, and 29 cents. Okay, add those two numbers together, 110,736. That gives me 214,878.29. I look at my choices. Okay, close enough. Couple of cents off, whatever. Clearly, the right answer here is C. Okay. All right. So we had some practice with that. Notice in one case it was a discount. Here it's a premium. It issued for more than face. And I would have known that it was going to issue for more than face because what? The stated coupon rate, the contract rate, the rate if they still printed bonds that would be printed on the face of the bond that doesn't change is 7%, while the market rate is 6%. That bond issues at a premium. Okay? Okay, good. And we just kind of proved the case here. Now you come over and we take a look at... oh, you know what? Interesting point about this question, too. Let's just take a look back at the choices. Now that I look, we know it can't issue at face. Cannot issue at face. So you're not going to get the 200,000 because we have a difference between the coupon rate, stated rate, okay, and the market rate, which is 6%. So you know it can't issue at face. And you know it's going to issue at more than face because the stated coupon contract rate is more than the market rate. So it can't be these two numbers that are less than face either. So you probably could answer that question without making any calculations in, like 5 seconds. Okay, but it's not a bad idea to practice with that the way we did. Okay, good. Now they tell us that here for number 3, a $500,000 bond sold at 98, therefore the bond, okay, now we practiced with this a little bit towards the end of the lecture. 500,000 times 0.98 gives me 490,000, right? So that means that it issued at less than face. So face is seen as a factor of 1. Less than face is seen as a factor of less than 1. More than face is seen as a factor of more than 1, 1.02, and so on. Okay? All right, good. 1.01, 1.02, and so on. So the bond sold at a discount, and a bond sells at a discount because what? Because the stated rate that's on the face of the bond, the coupon rate, the contract rate, and I'm using all those terms because those are all synonymous terms. I want you to be aware of all of them. They could be trying to articulate to you the contract rate that's going to stay on that bond forever was what was lower than an effective rate is another way of saying market rate, effective rate, yield rate. Okay, those all would indicate to you the market rate sold at a discount. Okay, and you know that it's sold at a discount because they gave you that 98 number. Okay, all right, good. Take a look at number 4, a bond issued with a face amount of 500,000. Stated coupon contract rate, synonymous terms of 10%. The current market rate of interest is 8%. So what's happening? This stated rate is more than this market rate. So these bonds will sell for what? For more than the face, right? They'll sell at a premium. All right. So I will give you a couple questions where I do expect you to sort of understand how market versus stated rate impacts the selling price of the bond more than face, less than face. Okay, so here's another one. How would the outstanding balance of bond payable, well, this is a little different, be affected by the amortization of each of the following? And remember, I pointed out to you the part where we talked about how the amortization of premium / discount affects the carrying amount of the bond. Okay, so when we have a premium, we start at more than face and we amortize down towards face. And as we make that premium, which gets added to the face, as we make that premium smaller, the carrying value of the bond decreases. The discount is being subtracted from face, and as you amortize that discount, make it smaller, the carrying amount of the bond is going to start out less than face, and it is going to come up towards face, right? So as you amortize the premium, what happens? The carrying amount decreases. As you amortize the discount, the carrying amount increases. Okay? All right, good. Let's take a look at number 6. The interest rate that determines the amount of cash interest paid is what? The stated rate. Stated rate. Cash rate is nonsense. Stated rate. And you can see that the other two are trying to point you towards the market rate. Stated rate, coupon rate. I'm going to write that down. Stated rate, coupon rate, contract rate, all synonymous. Okay? When we start dealing with market rate, effective rate, and the other one I see commonly is yield rate. Okay? That's all indicating what the market is. Okay, this is used to figure out the cash payments. The market rate is used to figure out the interest expense, the issue price of the bond. Okay, now come over, and the interest rate that determines the amount of interest expense is the what? Again, effective rate, yield rate, market rate is what you would use to figure out the interest expense. Okay, good. Moving right along here. We've got this number 8 now, and we've got this Kramer Company sold a 5-year 8% bond on October 1st, 2021. The face amount of the bond was $100,000, while the issue price was $102. Stop. Right there, I know that, okay, I'm not sure what happened there, guys. I just want to check to make sure they didn't do something to me that I'm not going to like. Okay. All right, no, we're still okay. I'm not sure what that flash on the screen was about, but we're still okay. Okay, so we've got this $102,000. That's the issue price. Face is what? Face is $100,000. Okay, so I know there's a premium on this bond, okay? And they asked me how much interest expense will Kramer Company report in its December 31st, 2021 income statement. Now, I look at these choices here, and, I have to figure out, well, what would be the cash interest first? So, $100,000, right? Cash interest is 8%, and they tell me that it is I don't know that they use the word semi-annual. Well, is it semi-annual? Came from face bond sold $100,000, interest payable on April 1st of each year. So it's not semi-annual. Okay, bonds don't have to be. They frequently are, but they don't have to be semi-annual. So I don't have to worry about sitting here and coming up with the semi-annual interest period. Okay, so they issue the bond on October 1st, 2021. but they want the interest expense at December 31st, 2021. So what happens? They want me to figure out what the interest expense is for the portion of the year from October 1st to December 31st. So that's what? All of October, all of November, all of December. That's 3 months. So I multiply that times what? Times 3/12. And so the cash interest, remember we use the stated rate to figure out the cash interest. The cash interest is what? $2,000. Okay. So I look at these and I'm saying, well, wait a minute. I have to amortize the premium here. And amortization of premium is going to do what? It's going to reduce my interest below the cash amount. Remember we said that in a lecture. Why? Because I got $102,000 when the bond was issued, right? But when I pay back, I'm going to have to pay back $100,000. So my interest isn't actually $2,000. It's some amount less each period. So what do? Well, if it's $2,000 and I have what is the cash interest, and I have a premium, that's a little confusing because the premium is also the same amount as the interest, which is a coincidence, is the same amount as the interest, cash interest that's being paid. $2,000, and I have to divide that by what? It's an annual payment of the interest, so I have to divide that by the 5 years. That means on an annual basis, I will amortize that premium $400 per year. But for this first year, I'm not going to take a full amount of premium amortization. I'm going to take the 400 times what? Times the 3/12 of the year, October, November, December. That means that I would have only amortized what? I would have only amortized $100 of that premium. And when I amortize the premium, the amortization of the premium reduces the interest below the cash interest. So I have to do what? I have to subtract the 100. That gives me this 1900, the correct answer. Okay. You could have eliminated A and D here and probably almost eyeballed yourself into that B must be the correct answer. But again, be careful, do the calculations. But I'm showing you that if you understand the logic, you can start to narrow a question like this down to a couple of choices. You don't have to do that so much for my exams because I give you lots of time, guys. At this stage of your development, I want to see you develop accuracy. Speed comes with practice. And so the more you deal with this stuff, you'll start to get faster and faster at doing these, and we'll build the speed as you move along in your development here. Not in this class. I'm not so much interested in speed. I'm interested in accuracy, understanding the process at this point, and the concept and the process. Okay, good. We're doing good. All right, let's go ahead and let's take a look at this one. And January 1st, 2021, Legion Company sold $200,000, 10%, 10-year bond. Interest payable semi-annually. Let's pick up some key pieces of information. And they give us the dates, June 30th and December 31st. The bonds were sold for $177,000. Price to yield 12%. The interest, okay, at the effective rate, yield, effective, market, same terminology that I do expect you to build up some comfort with here. Definitely you got to do that. Okay, so the bonds were sold for $177,000, and they're asking me that first semi-annual interest expense, and so I pick up what? Market rate, 12% divided by 2 gives me 6%, right? And you multiply that by the carrying amount of the bond at the start of the period for which you're calculating the interest. So since this was the first interest payment at June 30th, 2021, and they sold the bond for $177,000, that bond started out for that first 6-month period with a carrying amount of $177,000 times a 6% gives me the correct answer to this question. Okay, now it's important then to figure out, well, or I don't know if it's important, but let's play jazz with this question and sit here and say, well, would we be able to figure out, if I was asked, what the interest would be for the second 6 months using the effective interest method, which is what is required by GAAP, and which I'll be testing you on most of the time in this class. So we come up, and what happens? Well, if we paid $10,000, not paid, but if we had effective interest expense of $10,620, right? Okay, then what? Then we would go ahead and we would compare that to the cash interest. Cash interest is the face amount, $200,000, times 0.10, I guess we'll put the O in there, times 1/2, right? And that would come out to 10,000. So the difference between the 10,620 interest expense and the cash, that's cash interest, of 10,000 is 620. Okay, so how would we calculate the carrying value then for that next 6 months? Well, as you amortize the premium, the carrying amount of the bond goes up. So we take the 177,000 and we add the 620 to it. That gives me 177,620. And then for the next 6 month period, I would multiply that by the 6%. And yeah, I calculated that and wrote that down. Isn't that amazing? I finally remembered to write something down. So that would give me what? That would give me $10,657.20 would be my interest for the next 6 months, and so on. And you could continue to do that. So I could ask you to go into a second 6 month period. I'm not going to make you go out. Some questions I see, they burden you with having to do this, 3 times or something. I'm not going to do that. I might ask you on the second 6 months and ask you to do something like that. And so that's how you would answer that question. Okay. All right, good. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 10 now. Okay. And what is the cash interest for the 6 months? Okay. Well, it's a what? Well, we just did that. Okay. I just showed you that right there because it's the same question. The cash interest is what? Cash interest is 10,000. I just showed you that. Okay. And of course, you would then compare that to the actual interest, effective interest expense, to calculate the amortization of, in this case, that would be the amortization of a discount. Okay, and you would add that to the cash interest to figure out the interest expense, and then add that discount amortization. Well, to get the interest expense, you simply multiply the carrying amount of the bond times the effective interest rate. Okay, but to get the amortization of the premium, you're going to compare whatever that number yields versus the cash interest, which stays the same throughout the contract of the bond. Okay. All right. Good. Let's go ahead then and let's take a look at this one. And they are using what? The effective interest method, and they want the bond interest expense. All they were trying to do to you here in this question is see if you would pick up the cash interest. The effective interest is what? The carrying amount of the bond for the period times the yield market effective interest rate, all synonymous terms, of 10% here. And they tell you it's a semi-annual bond. So for the 6 months ended, be careful when you're calculating the interest. I could give you a question that asks you to do it for the entire year, and then you're going to have to do 2 calculations, the first 6 months, the second 6 months. So make sure you know what period they're asking you for. But for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2021, that's this $450,000. Okay. All right, good. We are moving along. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 12 here. Okay. And what's happening with number 12 is they're calling this bond before maturity. And when a bond is called before maturity, the process is what? We sit there and figure out how much cash they're going to have to pay to retire that bond. We're going to compare that to the carrying amount of the bond. As you know, carrying amount of the bond is the face minus the discount, or the face plus the premium, one or the other. Okay, can't be both. It's either a discount or a premium, right? Okay. Once we figure out the carrying amount of the bond, we compare the carrying amount to the cash that they're going to have to pay to retire it. If the cash is more than the amount that they're going to have to pay if the cash is more than the carrying amount of the bond, that's a loss on that retirement. If the cash is less than the carrying amount of the bond, that's going to be a gain on the retirement. Okay, so that's what they're asking me here. And they tell me that the bond has a face of $1 million and they're going to retire it at 102. You pick that number up, that's what you have to pay. 102, the face times 1.02 gives me this $1,020,000. That's the cash they're going to have to pay out. Okay, now what happens when they calculate the carrying amount of the bond? It's the face, which was $1 million, plus the amortized premium at that date, which was $92,800. If it was a discount, we'd subtract it. It's a premium, we add it, right? So you go ahead and you calculate that carrying amount. And when you take a look, and they only give me gains here as an option. I could give you a question where we have some option for loss in here. So the way you know it's a gain, right, is that we paid less cash than the carrying amount of the bond. And the way to think about that is, let's say you owed on your house $1,092,800. And some, nice guy came up to you and said, you can pay the house off for $120,000. That's okay. Would you feel like you gained something? Yeah, you'd go borrow the money from your mom. You'd say, Mom, give me this $1,020,000 to pay this fool off because I still owe $1,092,000. You'd feel that you'd feel that you gained, right? Okay, good. Taking a look at number 13 now, and what's happening here? Well, we issued $50 million of 12% bonds at April 1st, 2021 at 96, and they do a favor for me here. I think they do a favor for me. No, they don't. It's $50 million. The next one they do a favor for me. Okay, it's $50 million. Okay, and they issue it at 96. So 50 million times 0.96 is 48 million. Okay, so when I issue this bond, they're going to hand me 48 million bucks, right? The buyers are. But then we keep reading, and they say reflecting a market rate of 14% plus accrued interest. So what happens? They issued the bond on April 1st, but the bonds are dated January 1st, 2020 and mature on December 31st, 2040. Interest is payable semi-annually on June 30th and December 31st. So what's happened? When I issued these bonds, there was an interest payment on I issued these bonds on January 1st, 2021, right? Okay, or they're dated January 1st, 2021. I issued them on April 1st. So what's happened? 3 months of the interest period have gone by. January, February, March. And remember, we said that during the lecture, when you issue bonds in between interest payment dates, you make the purchaser give you the interest that has passed for those months before, from the last interest payment date to the day that you finally issue them the bonds. You hold that cash, and then when the bonds finally, when the next interest date comes, I should say, you go ahead and you return that cash to them plus any interest that they earn from the period from the date that they bought it up to that interest payment date. Okay, so we're sitting here and we've got this 50 million that is our face. The stated rate. Now we're collecting on cash. We're not figuring out interest expense here. We're figuring out what was the cash that will be paid when the bond, when the interest payment date finally comes. And so we have to take the 0.12, and we're going to collect interest from them for what? January, February, March, the 3 months that had passed before they bought it, right? So I go ahead and I'm going to multiply that times 3/12, 500,000 times 0.12. Okay, I'll put a multiplication sign in there. Times 0.12 times 3/12 equals 1,500,000. So the cash that I would collect when I issue this bond is 48 million plus 1,500,000. And I know, guys, that they like to abbreviate the numbers. I don't like to do that. I write the full numbers out when I do these calculations. It is so easy to make a mistake if you start trying to lop off zeros, guys. So, your calculator can take these numbers. I highly recommend you do it the way I do it. Put the full numbers in there. I rarely go ahead and, acquiesce to using those truncated versions of the numbers because I screw that up all the time. Okay, so 49,500,000, okay, which they annoyingly put is 49.5 million, is the amount of cash that you would collect on that issuance. It's the issue price, whatever the face is, plus the premium or minus the discount. Okay, or in this case, they just told us at 96, so we use that. And then whatever interest has accrued from the date of the last interest payment date to the date of the issuance. And since these bonds just got issued, there really was no last interest payment date, but they would have accrued interest for January, February, and March upon the date of their issue. And so we would collect that interest for those 3 months. Be careful. You're, cool with the date. Be careful. Sometimes they give you the date at the beginning of the month. Sometimes they give you the date at the end of the month. If they give you the date at the beginning of the month, don't count that month because that month hasn't gone by yet. Okay? All right, good. Let's take a look at number 14 now. And with 14, guys, I'm going to let you do this on your own. Okay? I'm going to let you do this on your own so you feel confident with going through and looking at a question like this. I'll do it for you. Pause it and do it on your own. Welcome back. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to do it together. Okay, and part of the reason I'm kind of jumping to say do it on your own, they give me the issue price. Okay, so that's not a terribly big deal for me, right? Then what? They tell me it's 90 million. They say they issued at 90. 100 million times 0.9 is 90 million. Okay. And I have to pick up the accrued interest. Now, the bonds are dated January 1st, 2020. And what? They are issuing the bonds on April 1st, 2021. So, again, we've got what? All of January, all of February, all of March going by. So, it's 100 million. Where's my 100? Where's how? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? 100 million times what? Times what was the interest rate? Remember, we used the coupon rate, the stated rate, right? Times 0.11, and again, times 3/12. The calculations right here. Times 3/12 going to give me now 2,750,000. So other than there's just a few new numbers in this question, that's why I was kind of saying you could do it on your own. 92,750,000. So I'm not sure that I'm adding much to the discussion here because they showed you the calculation there. Okay. All right, guys, that's a good set of work, what you should expect to see on your midterm in terms of chapter 14. Okay. All right, guys, chapter 15 coming up next. So hopefully you got the work done for this, and we'll be jumping into chapter 15 here pretty quick. All right, guys, have a good one.